I'm Jay, and this is Real Talk. And today we're going to talk about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But first, cue the in.
I like the idea that a voice can just go somewhere uninvited, like a dirty thought in a nice, clean mind.
All right, everybody, let's talk about what Russia's invasion of Ukraine means for everybody else, why, what, and how we're going to deal with this. So let's start with Vladimir Putin talking about how the Ukraine is going to attack Russia and he's just doing a preemptive strike. We all know that's fucking bullshit. Ukraine is a Nazi country. We all know that's bullshit. So what's really behind Putin's move to take Ukraine? Well, let's start with the fact that it's an ex-Soviet country that's not part of NATO. That makes it really easy to kind of understand where he's going because he doesn't want to fuck with the NATO countries yet. But if he can take Ukraine, then he starts to piss on the rest of the world. And as he was speaking, Putin had already said that this was the new steel curtain. Yeah, the new steel curtain. That's a great fucking thing to hear after they annexed Crimea. And that's a nice word for saying we just went and took that shit over. He's using all this bullshit rhetoric to justify his invasion into the UK. But to prove that this was already premeditated, let's just look at what Putin was wearing for his video on Monday and then again today. You're telling me this motherfucker doesn't have enough money to buy a different suit? That shit was pre-recorded. Let's not even front. It was pre-recorded because this motherfucker definitely got enough money to buy a different suit. So Russia has, now let's put up a map here just so everybody gets an idea. So now this is where the Russian troops have started to come in to line up for their invasion of invasion of Ukraine. So they're all around the borders of Russia and areas over there, Crimea. So you see how they're not in Poland, NATO country. They're not in Romania, but they're on the other borders. And here's a map of what's going on now, the bombing that's been taking place in Ukraine, the attacks that have happened. And we had just found out now that Russia has control of Chernobyl. Like, that's not a fucking problem to begin with. What went wrong with Chernobyl? It's a nuclear power plant. Who was controlling that at the time? Good question, right? So let's just start at the beginning. So Putin decides that he's going to invade Ukraine. And let's be real, he decided this a long time ago. He was just banking on the fact that Donald Trump would win the election so that he didn't get the resistance and the sanctions. And I know a lot of people are like, what the fuck? These sanctions aren't going to do anything. They're just sanctions. Let's talk about those for a minute. So Biden had announced that the four of the major banks that are players in Russia are now sanctioning Russia. A lot of their oligarchs, and they're going to put a squeeze on their financial ability to help pay for their space program, for shipping. So in the long run, it's really going to hurt Russia, these sanctions. In the short time, what these sanctions from the four major banks do is they put a real crunch on the people's money in Russia. So they're going to have a hard time getting money. They're going to have a hard time using credit cards. They're going to have a hard time paying for things. It's going to make it really rough on Russia and put a real squeeze on their economy. Is that enough to get Putin to back off? I doubt it. Like, he knew the shit was coming. He knew he was going to get sanctioned. So I don't think it's enough. And as long as China keeps buying things from Russia, it really undermines the sanctions. And China doesn't give a fuck. I know that they always say that they're going to back Russia, but when it comes militarily, they are not going to back Russia. This is not going to be Russia and China versus us in the UK, because first of all, we are not going to put troops on the ground to defend Ukraine because we can't. We will end up starting World War III if we jump in with military action. So what we are going to do is we're going to put a bunch of troops in NATO countries bordering Ukraine to make sure that Putin doesn't push past Ukraine. Now, I know this all started with, if you look at this map right here, and it's going to be a little rough to tell, but if you go down to the Russian border, there is places on that map that have pro-Russian people who really want to still be part of Russia. So he's using that as an excuse to go into the Ukraine, but he's not going to stop there. He wants the whole fucking thing. And let's not pretend that this has nothing to do with natural resources, because it absolutely does. So it's multi-layered. Is it trying to rebuild what the Soviet Union was? Absolutely. That is Putin's big thing. He thinks that part of the problem in the world is that the Soviet Union dissolved. So yes, he wants to bring the steel curtain back. He made that perfectly clear with the comments, the new steel curtain, which to a lot of people should be frightening because there's a bunch of countries around there that have to be scared about what's next. Will he push through once he takes Ukraine? Is this like how World War II started? It looks a lot like how World War I started. So we're in a place now where we have to be very careful on what we do, and that's why the sanctions are what's coming out. G7 is going to get together tomorrow. They're going to talk some more. NATO is going to make some decisions tomorrow on what they're going to do. It would be great for NATO to send out a bunch of troops along the border to show solidarity, to show that the world's still together on this. And that's the only thing that's going to defeat us in this, is that if the world does not stick together, Putin is banking on, yes, everybody's fired up right now, but in a month or two, in 3 months, in 6 months, will all these countries still be united with these sanctions? And that's the only way this can happen. And I'm really afraid this turns into the next Afghanistan, on the fact that, and I mean that by saying that the citizens of the Ukraine are going to stand up and fight back. So we're going to have skirmishes. It's going to make it very hard for Russia to control it completely. Now, Afghanistan's way different in the fact that the geography around it makes it very hard to control. So that's very different. And the Taliban is a much different animal than Russia, because Russia has a lot more forces, is a lot stronger. And also that Russia borders Ukraine, so it's going to make it a little easier to control. But I don't think they're going to be able to control it as easy as people think. And if you look right now, they're pushing towards the capital. And if they take the capital, Russia is definitely going to put a pro-Russian regime into the capital. And that's part of the reason that Putin hates what's going on in the Ukraine, because the president of the Ukraine is very anti-Russian. So, I mean, if you think back, I mean, it was less than a year ago, I don't remember exactly how long, it might have been less than that, that Putin was calling Ukraine their brothers. And now he's trying to take it back on these bullshit lies because he wants to rebuild what the Soviet Union was. And let's not forget how Putin took power, too. It was by force, from a top KGB agent to taking force and taking over the Kremlin. So Putin has got to his power by just taking it. So there's no surprise that he thinks he can just keep taking it, which is a lot like Hitler did with Germany. And it's a little scary for the rest of the world. I know in the U.S. we're in a lot safer place because of where we are on the globe and geographically. And for you to come and invade us, you'd have to go into Canada or into Mexico or come straight into the U.S., which wouldn't work. But let's not forget that Putin was testing ballistic missiles, nuclear missiles, just a week ago to wave his dick to let everybody know what he is capable of. And he has been making threats that if we get involved, that the West will see repercussions that we've never seen before, or a power we've never seen before. However douchebag put it, like there was blatant threats to the U.S., to the UK, if we get involved. So sanctions is the way we have to go, or we're going to start another world war, which is the last thing we want. And Putin seems a little unstable. So maybe the nuclear weapons aren't a good thing to have in that guy's hands with us pissing him off. So I completely understand why the Biden administration is going the way they're going. The only thing I have a problem with is a lot of times the administration will tell you what they're doing and why. We got the what, we didn't get the why, but I think we'll get more of the why after NATO and the G7 come up with what they're going to do. I know that Russia argues that some of the NATO countries don't even have a right to be in NATO, and that he's been making that a political stance for a long time. But it has all been leading up to the same thing. He's been wanting to invade Ukraine for a long time. And again, like I said, Biden winning kind of fucked up his plans, because if Trump would have won, he wouldn't get the sanctions. Trump was already praising him today and shitting on Biden. And I don't understand how you praise Putin, especially with what's going on. I know it's been Trump's MO to always back Putin. Makes me think that Putin's got some shit on Trump, but that's a whole nother story. And like, really, again, fuck both parties. But the fact that the so-called head of the Republican Party right now is going to come out and side with a murderous dictator is beyond me. And you guys can say that Russia's that's not a dictator. He's turned Russia back into a police state over the last how many years. He's got it back to where he wanted. They're arresting protesters right now, which shout out to them protesters, because when we protest in the US, we're not risking as much as people in other countries. Like, these people are going to be arrested. They have been being arrested in bus loads, like police buses pulling up, just arresting people, taking them up, coming back, filling them up over and over and over again. And these people are going to have a lot worse repercussions than we would in the US. People in the UK have worse repercussions for protesting, but nothing like they're going to see in Russia. So shout out to these people for risking their safety and to stand up for what's going on for other fellow human beings. Where do we go from here? This is going to be a long road, guys. I don't think this is ending anytime soon. That maybe the sanctions work. I truly believe at some point Russia takes Ukraine, all of Ukraine, and it's going to be in control of Russia for a long time to come, because once they have something, they're not going to give it back. But I want to let you know to stay tuned, because tomorrow I'm going to bring in a friend of mine from the UK, Maddie, which if you watch any of the Yankee and the Brit Sports Talk, you already know who he is. And we're going to talk a lot about how it affects the UK, what's going on over there, how it's affecting his girlfriend, because her family is in Lafayette, which is right there in the middle of things. Used to be another Soviet country. So is that something that Putin wants to do, is to retake all the old Soviet countries, rebuild up the Soviet Union? I doubt they'd call it the Soviet Union again, but you get what I'm saying. Put up the steel curtain, as he was saying. So there's a lot of crazy shit going on. But what we do know is a lot of big sanctions coming down from 30 different countries too. This isn't just the US. This is a group of 30 countries coming together, putting down these sanctions. We also know that militarily, there's nothing we can do. As much as I would love to have the US go in there, slap Putin in his fucking face, we can't. We can't, because it's not fair to the rest of the world. It's not fair to the American citizens. And it would probably mean the end of world as we know it for everybody. So that's not something we can do. Putin knows it. So this is going to be one of those pissing contests that take a while, who blinks first type of thing. And it's a big dick wagging contest right now, but people are dying. And that's where the problem comes in. Like, countries always have dick wagging contests. They usually do it financially, with cyber warfare, those things. And right now, it's a military action. This is probably the most egregious military action since World War II. Think about that. The most egregious military action since World War II. And we all know it's based on lies. It's all based on lies, so that Putin has an excuse to try to do what he's doing. Most of the world sees through it. I know there's a bunch of people out there that may not understand exactly what's going on, or if you're riding the Trump train, you're getting disinformation. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying the Biden administration is always honest and fully forthcoming with information. I'm just saying Trump came out today and said some crazy shit, which shouldn't surprise anybody, but he literally praised a dictator while shitting on the leader of our country. I understand they don't like each other, but like, at what point does being American and being a decent, moral human being become more important than getting yourself in the headlines or making yourself relevant again? I just don't get it. Like, it's the narcissism or whatever. And like I said before, both parties suck fucking balls. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying at some point you got to unify, right? Like, there's certain times in life you have to unify. 9/11. Like, there's times, and this is one of those times. As the world, we need to unify against what's going on. So, like, I really don't like this, how this is becoming political in the US between two parties. There shouldn't even be an argument here about the right and wrong of it all, the moral stand that people are taking. But yet again, we live in a country where the government has us divided, and as long as we're fighting each other, we're weak. They know together we are strong and we control shit. As long as we're fighting each other, they control us. So remember that. Don't let them win. That's all this is always. And both sides do it. Don't get me wrong. I am not just trying to plaster one side. But the fact is, there's a time to put that bullshit away and come together, and this is one of those times. All right, guys, I just wanted to break it down a little about what's going on. I hope that was clear. If you have any questions, drop them below. Any comments, let me know what you think, and stay tuned, because tomorrow or Saturday, I will be coming back with Maddie, who lives in the UK. We'll give a whole different perspective on what's going on. And people he loves are affected by this in more ways than we could ever understand. And that's a good point of view to try to understand too, because as long as we are always open to other people and understanding what is going on, we can, as the world, get through anything. We can get through anything together. And that's what people have to understand. This is no longer the US versus whatever country, or Russia versus Ukraine. Like, this is a global economy. This is a global world now. The internet has made the world a smaller place. We have to be more inclusionary, accepting, and understanding. So the more point of views we get, the better we can be with the understanding part. So that's why I'm hoping to get that out tomorrow, but Saturday at the latest, depending what time we can record it, because there is a 6-hour difference between Maddie and I. But stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned. We got some new podcasts coming. I think you're really going to like. And also, make sure you always tune in for Yankee and the Brit Sports Talk, MMA Underground Weekly, and the Marked Out Podcast. Tomorrow on Real Talk, I'll be dropping my interview with Cuzzo from Chronicles Podcast and Overtime Reactions from Overtime Hustling. So don't miss that. That was a great conversation I had with this man. I can't wait to do it again. All right, guys. One world, one love. Deuces.
Everything's polluted. The environment, the government, the schools, you name it.
This radio person is the whole problem. Are we going to allow this guy to be heard by anyone who can turn a dial?
You out there?